Yes, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this latest webinar from IFOL. The Painless Path to Perfect Documentation is called. All about going paperless, all the P words today. So, really excited to have you all with us this afternoon. As I say, it's a best practice webinar today. We're going to get some tips for managing your documents effectively, talking about going phygital, sort of a mixture between physical and digital. And we'll hear from some experts at Restore about the benefits of that today. I'm Jay Viderlingham, and we're really lucky today to be joined by Mike Noyce, Solutions Consultant from Restore Information Management, and Louise Graham as well, COO and Head of Institute at IFOL, with a background working across the sector for many years, and an expert in all things to do with accounts payable. Before we dive in, though, let's get going with a quick poll just to kind of get everyone on their toes and thinking about paperwork and how you store things. So, what percentage of your paperwork is stored digitally? So we've got some options here: 0 to 25%, 26 to 49%, 50 to 75%, 76 to 99, and 100%. So those are the options. Um, got a few seconds there for people to kind of process what they're being asked and have a think about it. But yeah, we're really interested to know what percentage of your current paperwork is stored digitally. So if you could just put one answer in, and we'll kind of have a look at those results when they come in, and hopefully get a bit of a state of play uh, about this all. So they're changing all the time, so we're going to have a bit of a fluctuation here. But this is it's looking good so far. Bit of a mixture so far, but let's just make sure that everyone's got a chance to have a think about it. Really kind of consider when you're day to day, what percentage of your actual paperwork do you think is stored digitally, and have a real think about that. So let's have a look at some of these results then. So 0 to 25%, 22% of respondents said that. 26 to 49%, 11%. Curiously, zero, say 50 to 75%. I don't know if that's just because they think they're either one way or the other. 76 to 99%, so 44% of the most of the people that have responded have said that. And 22% people get a gold star because they're 100% here. So let's hear from them. Um, let's get a bit of reaction to those figures, I think, firstly. Mike, what do you make to that, to the results of this poll?
Yeah, look, especially at the top end of the scale with 100% is that's fantastic. I suppose what we could ask as well off the back of the poll, which we're not going to do, but is what percentage of the documentations came in a digital format to start with? Because that's what we always get asked with our, or we try and push people down the route of store digitally, even when documents come into your business in a physical format or in a paper format, try and get them into that electronic format to either process or at least end storing, in that digital format. So, yeah, the poll, what percentage of your paperwork is stored digitally? It looks like a good percentage are doing that. It'd be interesting to find out, how they're getting to that, or if it is coming in electronic. And the small amounts, which is 22%, only not all of it or not a lot of it is. It's how could they get to that, up that scale and get as much of it as they can into that electronic format or medium and into an EDM system or their ERP system or something. But it's good. It's better than some of the results you see when you speak to organizations. Some everything's electronic, perfect. Some are getting to that, and then others are need that help to then transform that physical paperwork into an electronic format.
Yeah, Louise, what are your thoughts on the results?
I think it's quite interesting, those high numbers there. I wasn't expecting to see that actually. But I also think what might be interesting, again, we're not going to ask, but I'd love to know, of the things that are not stored digitally, have people made an active decision to not store them digitally? And do they know what they are? Or have they just not got around to it yet? Because actually, there may be a case for some things being stored manually, and that's fine as long as you know what it is and why you're doing it. So I think that would be quite interesting to know. But yeah, I'm surprised at that. 22%, 100% digital. Brilliant. What are you doing on this call? Tell us what else we can help you with. You might
Yeah,
be able to tell us.
And yeah, and on that point, actually, it's a really good thing point to make, actually, Louisa. This is your webinar, so if you have any questions or comments as we go through, please do put them in the chat, and we'll get to them and address them because we want to make this as interactive as we can, and kind of address some questions that you've got going. So, yeah, please do share your thoughts as we're going across. So yeah, when it comes to that sort of that hybrid, I suppose that a lot of organizations seem to be in part paper, part automated. I mean, is that common, and what can people do to sort of move the dial? I mean, Mike, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, we work with organisations that are at that kind of lower end of the scale, and they want to get to the digital, the euphoria of everything coming in electronically, or at least stemming the flow of those of paper documents coming to the organisation. And the bugbear is, having the kit equipment and the scanners or the resource to transform them into electronic format to then flow through the business into the automated, applications programs that we've got or the organization will have to extract data and pass it through for authorization. But we see a lot of organizations wanting to get to that state, don't sometimes always know where to start, and don't know whether they need an EDM system, a new IDP AI solution. And we kind of say, okay, well, let's look at the top 20% of suppliers. Let's look at the bulk of paper that's coming in, or the amount of documents that you have, maybe even coming in electronic format via email. Let's get those into a system that mean that they can stay in that electronic format, because, and we have had it before where emails are coming in, invoices are coming in, and people actually print them. Sometimes, and we have had a couple of organizations of this year we're speaking to that certain value invoices, directors or departments wanted them printed. They said, no, can we just have that in physical copy? Which you kind of think is going backwards a little bit, but people like to handle paperwork. They like to move it around the office. They like to clip it together with goods receipt notes, delivery notes, match up line items, physically hold something. Everyone likes to hold something rather than see it on a screen. So it's they get asked to do that. It then maybe goes through their business, and then they still need to do something with that document at the end, because if it's had markups on it, if it's been stamped, if it's been signed and things, it's then, okay, we've got to then transform that back to a digital sense and put it into an EDRM system, or in a or even store it. People hole punch it in the old days, put it in files, mark it up, January invoices, put them into a storage, company like us, and that's what we do for a lot of organizations. So it's how we help them to say, actually, you can take things electronically straight from email, straight from a source, get them into an EDRM system that integrates or links with, or presents through an ERP system, your finance solution, which means you don't need to do that printing, and you can save the planet by obviously not printing and using up more paperwork. So we try and work with organizations, or most organizations do work with them to say, actually, don't do this. Let's try and work down that way of going paperless.
Yeah, and Louise, any thoughts on this? Are people too tied to that kind of comfort blanket of a hard copy, do you think sometimes?
I think people, I get it. I get why people like to look at a piece of paper. And, in accounts payable departments, we know quite often for statement reconciliations and so on, people like to do what we used to call a tick and bash, which is where you have two pieces of paper and then you reconcile the two and cross them off as you go. And there's something very satisfying about that. I get that. I'm a person who loves a list, so I get it. But actually, we have got to get used to things being digital. I think it's the 21st century. We shouldn't be printing off documents and then doing something and then digitizing them again. It's another step in the process that shouldn't be there. I can't think of a very good reason why it should be there. In most cases, it's not needed. It's about custom and practice and people just not getting used to it. And so the only way you get used to something and change your habit is by continually doing something different. That's where people like Restore can help you. And I've been around long enough to remember when there was nothing digital, and I can promise you it was a horrible world compared to now. It was rooms and rooms full of filing cabinets and full of great big files, and people's filing systems would differ A to Z, or country, or so finding a document was absolutely impossible, and it was impractical, and it was a waste of space and a waste of time, frankly.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing none of us have got enough of is time. So yeah, I think the digital world is to be welcomed, and this digital world, which is cross between the two, is also definitely to be welcomed. There is also a security question. I think we've got a question, Jay. I don't know if you want
Yeah,
to
I was just going
ask
to
it
come to
about
that actually.
security, because I get that, and actually. Printing off documents and having them hanging around is not secure, especially if they're invoices with pay rates or pay slips or confidential information on them.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so thank you for flagging that. So Veronica Mojica, I hope I've said that correctly in our chat, has asked what is the best way to keep digital documents secure. So, Mike, one for you, I suppose. What's the
Yeah,
best way to keep
and
things?
again, we get asked this quite a lot. I suppose the systems we have three or four systems, our applications, programs that we provide to companies all over the world, really. We've either got cloud-based applications that are, specifically designed for finance or other departments, where we try and mimic the exact filing system that the organization would have, almost design filing cabinets, folder structures within the solution that will hold things like invoices, pay slips. We have HR files, deeds, leases, anything that's kind of business critical or it's needed for the organization to store for a period of time. We'll design the system so it looks in the same way as their current filing system and cabinets, but give them added features like full text search, or be able to apply AI to go away and say, a lazy way of searching, please go and find me all invoices from this supplier. So it's an actually easier way rather than getting out of your seat and going through filing cabinets. But the nice thing about putting it into a system, whether it's a cloud-based solution or an on-prem solution like we also supply, is you can lock those cabinets down. You can lock the index criteria within documents down to individuals, roles, groups, users, and build permissions around those. So it might be that you have a certain value invoice or up to a certain value that only certain people can see, especially when we're workflowing documents around the business. It might be that the first level approver it has a lower amount. It goes to the next level approver, and then or certain documents can't be seen by those people in the organization. You also have automatic audit trails built onto those systems. And I would recommend, if you're ever looking at an EDRM system to hold documentation, especially around finance, invoices and processes, you have a good system that's got audit trails and full history. So it tracks every time someone's opened it, printed it, downloaded it, and redacted it or done everything. You're not changing the original documents. You've still got that, version of the truth. So it can be better than holding the physical copy in an electronic copy. You've got quicker access to it. You can have multiple copies, and you can have that retention built into those systems. I would also always recommend you add the retention policies to that. So the program and the application's doing that for you, which is another benefit of why you should have documents stored electronically. But definitely keep them in a system that's industry standard, got all of the ISO 27001 accreditation. If it's a cloud solution like SOC 2 and all of the various certificates you'd expect with it, and whether you're using a cloud solution or have an on-prem system that you privately host, make sure it's an industry leading solution, and then it's designed the way you want or the organization wants to have their files stored. Because and the reason will back me up, it's not going to have a solution that you dump everything in and then take you just as long to find a document. I could have just done that as easy in the paper world. So and that's what we take organizations through, just slowly by surely making sure that system is working to them, and it's the same way of finding things in the physical way as they would do in the new electronic way, but with all those added benefits and features that you get with an EDRMS system.
Yeah, and security is such a live issue, isn't it? In every
Yeah.
industry, we look in the headlines, look just yesterday, in terms of cybersecurity, it's something that is a real sort of clear and present concern for lots of people. Louise, is it right that that people are worried about this, and is a paper backup you kind of your best friend?
No, no, not really. I mean, I know I would say that, but no, generally paper isn't a good idea. Although, actually, I have worked in government in the public sector, and disaster recovery plans are printed on paper and kept in a building where they can be grabbed as you walk out the door. And actually, yeah, that is quite handy if you haven't got anyone's phone number or email address or any access to any systems at all. So that's true disaster recovery. But in terms of security, I just want to say another thing in addition to what Mike said, which is, these days we've all got GDPR to comply with and various data protection legislation. And actually, to be able to say, actually, we've got certain logins or access levels or authentication, to be able to say that rather than, yeah, it's all in a filing cabinet over there, and everybody in the building can just walk in there and help themselves. It is really, really helpful. So, yeah, I think it's very sensible thing to do.
Yeah, and I think a part of it is a cultural thing as well. It's helping people to sort of trust that digital system and that process, isn't it? And making sure that everyone's on board with it, so you don't, then need rooms of filing cabinets.
Yeah, and the same, people store things in the F drive or OneDrive. I always stick it all in there, which is fine to do to a point, but you still should have the security around that and an EDRM system or a solution that's kind of off the shelf, ready to go, that adds all those added features like multi-factor authentication, your single sign-on, link with your network infrastructure. It's better because that's what they're designed to do. And kind of going back to the physical side of things, yeah, invoices, finance, information, it should all be digital now. It's a better way of working. The security or cyber plans, yeah, have a printed backup, because yeah, if you need to work from that and you can't get access to files, it makes sense. I mean, in a restore way, the documents we tend to hold for organizations in a physical way or physical store are things like patient records, archival leases and deeds that need to be kept for 25, 30, 40 years, that you can scan and capture, have an electronic working copy of that document around the business, but the original kind of wax sealed document, ribbon bound, is always stored away in a secure vault storage or one of our buildings, wherever they need to be stored. And the nice thing about that physical word that you said earlier on, Jay, that it's, if you need a electronic copy of that, we can go straight to it, find it, produce that electronic copy, send that to the organization, while retaining the original that needs to be kept for a long period of time. And then you can work on that without then having the original pass around the office, potentially someone spilling coffee on it or using it as a coffee coaster. So it's, you get the best of both worlds. With the finance application we're talking about here, invoices, 7-year life shelf normally, if that. So it's get them, if they're electronic, keep them electronic. Please don't print them, put them in a system. We help organizations build those systems, but there's still a need for that physical sense, maybe not in the finance world, but definitely in the other areas of the business that, we have to store some paperwork for a long, long time for. And when we've had in for hundreds of years, almost, some of it.
Wow. I mean, that's the thing, and that's, as you said, why it's so important that you can kind of be paper light or paperless if you can. And you mentioned there about finding documents, and I think we've got another poll for you guys. So sort of fingers on buzzers and stand by again, because we've got a question that we want to ask you about document retrieval. So the second poll for today is, how confident are you could find documents when requested? So again, just one answer for these: 100% confident, 50% confident, 25% confident, or not at all confident. So if it comes down to it, how confident are you that you could find documents when requested? So yeah, just one answer needed, and looks like people are getting into it. So yeah, people look like they're fairly confident at the moment. So let's just wait for everyone to respond. I mean, it's a key part of document, of any kind of record keeping, isn't it? Document retrieval. So we should hope that people are able to get things quickly. But yeah, it's that confidence, isn't it? So I think it looks like everyone's, or most people are getting involved with the results. Okay, let's have a look at that. Okay, so it looks like 50% say they're confident. Um, Sorry, 55% say they're 50% confident. All these percentages are confusing me. And 45% of people say they're 100% confident that they're able to retrieve documents as and when they need them. So I suppose, Mike, what do you make to that then? Is that encouraging, do you think?
Yeah, and I'd say the 100% confident people are the ones that originally said that they were 100% electronic, hopefully, in their in their system and
Yes,
solutions they
I agree.
use.
Totally agree. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, and you wouldn't want anyone in that poll to be in 25% confident or below, really. Hope, you'd expect everyone should be able to access the documents or find them, whether they're in electronic state, paper copy, in files. They hopefully should find those when they need them, and restore, even when you're using an external company to either scan or store documents. You should hopefully be able to say I'm 100% confident because I could use the help desk, I could use the portal to access my documents whenever I need them, even if they're not on site and you're using an outside archive company. The only other thing I'd say is, yeah, so I mean, the last part of it is, or the first part of it is if we have, or we work with organizations that potentially don't want paperwork coming into their organization, and we do a lot of this where we run a kind of a digital mailroom for them, where mail items will come directly to us because they can't stem the flow of paper coming in. So they'll say, actually, we'll redirect it to restore. And there are other organizations like us that do the same thing. We'll open up the mail items, scan and capture them there and then in the exact format they should be captured, and then upload them directly into like the first in tray or the area of the EDRM system, so that organization can work electronically, even when they can't stop suppliers and people sending in the documents in the paper format. So, and we have had that before. They're banging their head saying, "Oh, we've got 80% everything electronic coming in. We just can't get these last 20% sending them in that format." So we work with them to say, well, we've got a Simply Mail process. You can have those documents PO'd into us using the PO box. We'll open them, scan them, capture them, and send them back that same day in electronic format. So we help them get to that state. So the only part of, I'd say, the 50% confident is might be when they haven't received them yet and they were coming to an organization or they're still waiting to say, actually, they said they sent an invoice, but we haven't got it yet. It's either set up in an email system waiting to come in, or it's maybe in the post. But no, the poll looks good, and yeah, definitely, hopefully, 100% confident are all the people that have it electronic already.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose how much of a problem is it if files are, let's say, aren't indexed properly or are stored across multiple platforms? How do you go about looking for things like that then if you document retrieval in those instances?
So again, if it's in a EDM system, electronic document management repository, where you've created the cabinet, the file store, the folders, whatever you want to call it. If you've got a system and a solution, the most are that you can do a full text sweep and search for. So if you loaded a document in a system, you're looking for an invoice number or an amount or a supplier, a name, a number, you should be able to put that in the search criteria, and it will take you to every instance it's found that. And we've found documents before where they've been tagged behind others, or suppliers sent in two invoices or three or four, and it's the last page of the PDF. They haven't been split. They've been uploaded into a solution. And they said, we've sent that document in. Okay, we couldn't find it, but if you put the invoice number in, it actually was the last page. So the EDM system, you can split that apart and create the new invoice for it. So it's, even in the electronic state, you can easily find everything, even when it's a scanned document that you're capturing and creating into electronic format, if you're then capturing or using a full text OCR sweep of those documents. So it's pretty, you should be confident to find those when they're in a system. And that will normally work better than even if they're just stored in an F drive or SharePoint or somewhere, because you just got slightly normally better search features on those products.
Yeah, and Louise, I suppose in terms of the modern world, things like smart search, metadata, kind of AI solutions all play a big part that, don't they now, in terms of document retrieval?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, going back to the olden days, but I do remember when people used to just put everything in a box and put the year on the outside. So you can imagine if you needed to find something, you'd have to go back to the box that said 2023, so, and then you'd have to pay somebody to go through every document in that box until they found the needle in the haystack. So, we're definitely in a better place these days. What I would say is it's quite interesting that quite a few people on the poll, I think around half, said they were only 50% confident. I wouldn't want to tell my CFO that I was only 50% confident that I could find an invoice that the auditors wanted to see. So, auditors are not impressed if they say, right, we've just done a walkthrough of this big amount of expenditure, this process, or even a small amount of expenditure, and we'd like to see the purchase order, the invoice, the receipt for all these items, and let's have it. You can't go back to them and say, can you choose another one? Because we couldn't find it. They're not impressed by that. And your CFO doesn't ever want to hear it. And so I must admit, I've never gone to a CFO and said, we can't find it, because there's always a way, and you find a way to find it. But actually, how lovely if you can say 100% that you can put your hand on any document that an auditor wants you to find, and your CFA is going to be happy, because actually the auditors got what they wanted when they wanted it. And it's not just invoices. Auditors ask for all sorts of backup documentation, and they've got a lot of power. They can make recommendations if you can't provide the documentation they need when they need it. So yeah, another good reason to go digital, and to be able to find things that quickly, rather than have to pay somebody to go through a box of paper or a filing cabinet or whatever it might be.
Yeah, you raised a good point there about audit fitness. It'd be interesting to hear from people in the chat actually if if either they've been audited and couldn't find something, or they've got any experiences that they want to share. But that sort of being fit and ready for an audit is a really good spur for some people to move to this sort of technology, isn't it, Mike?
Yeah. I mean, it makes it a lot easier if everything's electronic. It's in a system. You can just give an auditor a login, maybe a read-only login, or a login to a certain area to say, here's all our invoices, here's all our accounts, or here's the entire process, good receipt notes, POs, invoices. Here's the audit trail of who's accessed them, so who's viewed those, who's stamped them, who's electronically signed them. And with a system or a process and some of the things we build for organizations, that's exactly makes that part of the process a lot easier. Yeah, I mean, again, going back in time, losers same thing. I remember speaking to organizations, they're like, yeah, we can find everything. The documents, some of the documents, if they're being processed, they're in Sally's top lock drawer. We can just get access to them, or we think they're there. And they say, yeah, but which was on holiday for 2 weeks. Whether the invoices or they're sat with so and so's pigeonhole, they're around the building somewhere. In the electronic world, you should be able to just be able to access them, and it's multiple access. So if they are with someone to be, authorized, or they're going through that process, they're in the cabinet still. They're not multiple people can see them at the same time. So you can give an auditor, access to those, or it could be that someone wants to review a document that's being worked on in the digital sense. You haven't got to create multiple copies. There's one version of the truth, and everything's being recorded of who's accessing that, when and where, and all the audit trails are being, recorded on that document. So it makes it legally viable that you can, if you really needed to, you could download that document, export it out of the system with the audit trail of everything that's happened with that the moment it turned up in your organization, and present that legally to say, there you go, Mr. Auditor, or whoever it needs to judge. That's everything with that paperwork, which sometimes in the paper world, you don't know who's maybe looked at that. It could have gone across someone's desk, so you can do that in the digital sense a lot better. And yeah, that's just another great reason for having everything electronic, or getting to that paperless office, quicker. It just makes things better.
I think you put that really well. I just want to get to another question that's come in on the chat from Taylor Duval. He says, how much of an emphasis should we put on moving any existing paper documentation over to electronic storage? They're going electronic. What do they do with what they already have as paper? Any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, if that's the again, we've had it with organizations. We do a lot of scanning, we do a lot of back capture, a lot of electronic capture, we do a lot of storage. And especially with invoices, if it's 7 years or 6 years plus current, we might look at and I don't know, say an organization had 100 boxes of archival paperwork that they potentially wanted to go electronic with, but they were like, I don't know, 10 boxes a year or something like that. We would always say to them, it's not probably really worth back scanning and paying for that everything to be electronic, or going back in time that far, because within a year you're going to be able to legally delete those files or remove those, or you should be kind of like not needing to keep those ones that are 6-7 years old. So it's almost like, look at your latest documentation in your physical paperwork, maybe this year's, last year's, potentially year after. Maybe scan that, capture that, put that into a system, put the very oldest documentation into an archive store, and hopefully you shouldn't ever need to go back to that, hopefully, and then make sure it's got a retention date in the physical sense, that after a year that those boxes or that paperwork will be destroyed by a reputable secure destruction organization, a bit like our organization Data Shred that we have. Cross shred and liquid pulp that and recycle it, hopefully to tick off your 14,001 certificate. But the documentation that you've got, which is a couple of years old, get that potentially scanned, get that in the system so you've got quick access to it, and then make sure everything now going forward, line in the sand, is coming in electronically and is produced into electronic format into a system, or is saved directly via your emails coming in, or Exchange, whatever you have it coming straight into that system, rather than people moving it, make it as automated as possible. So I always like, it would be lovely if everyone say, yeah, we'll capture everything and scan everything, but you kind of got to be honest to say it costs more to kind of scan everything, and it might not always be necessary. Look at the
Yeah.
save to the organization, do the newest stuff that you potentially need access to, and the oldest stuff, as long as you put it in with a retention date, and you have to have that destruction date on every box that you're adhering to, and then make sure that's done every year, and then you'll be in a state within a couple of years, 2 or 3 years, of nothing in storage going forward and everything electronic. So that's what we kind of look at and say, what's the best fit.
Okay, yeah, but that's thanks for that. Louise, any thoughts on Taylor's question there?
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Depends on what you've got. Look
Mm.
at what's most important. Look at how old it is. Look at what you really want to keep. Anything that's already past its retention date, and you're absolutely 100% sure of that, you can just destroy, right? But make sure it's done securely. You can't have stuff turning up in wherever. So, yeah, it depends on what you've got. I would really encourage anyone thinking about this to just have a look at the state of play. What have we got and where is it? Where is it? And that's not often a simple question. So I did a project a while ago, and there were documents in 60 different sites across the whole of the UK and Ireland. And some of them were duplicate and some of them were confidential, and they were in various different places. But actually, even to document where those what it was and where it was quite complicated. So you do sort of need to have a look at what you've got and where it is, and really think about people's drawers, think about unlocked desks, think about filing cabinets, think about archive rooms or whatever you've got, and just really make sure you capture it all, and then prioritize ruthlessly the stuff you really want to keep. That would be my advice.
I,
Yeah.
I remember we had this is quite a few years ago now. We were setting up a big mailroom in a bank, a very large, very well known big bank that we processed, and this was kind of more HR and payroll information, but they were going down this route to say, no, we're going digital. This organization is going to run the digital mailroom, and it was run on site in this very large bank, and they had an amnesty day, and they basically said, right, anyone who's got anything, you're not going to bring it out of your desk, bring it out of your drawers, bring it all you've got hidden around. We'll put it all on this desk. We'll make sure everything gets scanned, captured, and they did. And there was a pile. It was a pile of paperwork that they had all over the building that people had squirreled away, because it was like, no, let's just get it all electronic in the system. It will
Yeah.
also get sorted. It will get filed correctly, and then going forward, it will come in via mailroom and you'll get it delivered electronically. Please don't print anything. Use the systems, but yeah, it took that amnesty day of not doing that, and then working through it quite a few weeks later of paperwork that potentially should have been stored in various places, but it worked. And the
Yeah, great idea.
Maryland's run for years and years and years, like all of the HR, and it gets slightly different. Organization, if you got occupational health paperwork, people working with certain chemicals and things, documentation needs to be kept a lot longer. Patient data, we do a lot with the NHS and various medical practices. That paperwork stays in systems a lot longer or in storage. And sometimes you're talking thousands and thousands of boxes of files and patient records. So, the cost is too high to backscan everything. So they potentially put it into a storage location, and they have a scan on demand. They access it when they need it and say, actually, we'll have this patient file scanned and captured. Then we'll bring that down. So there's always their different ways of doing things depending on cost and budget and the need for it. But we work with organizations just to provide the best fit for what they want to get to, or the service they potentially need to make their solutions run better.
I love that idea of the amnesty of people sort
Mhm.
of bring out your paper, and actually leads me really neatly actually to our third poll of the afternoon. So again, sort of fingers on buzzers, because we're going to give you another poll now, which is it's about archive retrieval. This one, yeah. So um, how much time do you spend on archive retrieval? So have a little think about that. Um, over 10 hours a month, less than 10 hours a month, or no idea, we've never measured it, which again is sort of an admission that it's something that's perhaps not been as much of a priority as it should have been. So yeah, the question is, how much time do you spend on archive retrieval? Over 10 hours a month, less than 10 hours a month, or no idea because you've never measured it. Just have a little think about that, because actually, in terms of workflow, it's probably something you come across quite a lot, isn't it? About where do I find stuff, and where did I put stuff? So in terms of finding things when you need to find them, how much time do you actually spend on that process? So let's have a look what people are saying here. So over 10 hours a month, less than 10 hours a month, or no idea, we've never measured it. It's looking like, yeah, the vast majority, 60% say they've no idea because they've never measured it. 20% say less than 10 hours a month, and the other 20% say over 10 hours a month. So does that surprise you? Let's go to you, Louise, first. Does that sort of surprise you that people have said that?
No, it doesn't surprise me, but I think maybe if we'd have asked a different question, maybe if we'd have said, at year end, how often do you find people saying, I can't talk to you, I've got to get stuff for the auditors? Then you might find that actually you've got people spending quite a lot of time on finding stuff for the auditors. I know I'm talking about auditors, but it is a really big part of AP and year end and audit periods is to find documents and help them with their walkthroughs. So I think if you've never measured it, it's quite likely to be in the over 10 hours a month bit. So not 100%, but it probably is because, yeah, and over 10 hours a month, even that 20% of over 10 hours a month, you could be doing some really value added stuff in that 10 hours a month, right? That's quite a lot of time. That's over a working day. You could be doing, I don't know, managing your supplier relationships, your vendor relationships. You could be providing really valuable management information for your team. You could, you could just be doing something really useful, rather than getting documents out of storage. So yeah, I would say that's quite interesting. But I think actually you'll find that probably most AP departments and finance departments are spending a lot more of that time at certain times of year. So year end, audit, that kind of thing. It's probably more.
Yeah. Mike, what were your thoughts on that? The fact that most people don't tend to measure how much time they're spending. What do you think?
Yeah, again, it's one of those things that you just you just think hopefully it's there. If it's electronic and digital, you go into a system and find it. It's the easiest way, as in if it's there, people won't measure it necessarily. If it's on F drives or scan drives, it might take a bit longer. I mean, I sometimes search for things and think, where have I put that? If it's my document, you kind of hopefully doing the searches and the quick searches in your Explorer or SharePoint, wherever system you have. If it's in the physical sense, if it's in the office in files, then you've got to get up your seat, go away, find that, thumb through the paperwork and find what it is. If it's physical storage offsite, then yeah, you are putting an email into a portal, requesting that box to come back, and you're waiting on that either being delivered, or if it's someone like us, we provide an electronic scan. We'll go to the box, open the file, scan it, send it to you that same day. So there are benefits in sometimes having things in the storage side when there's high volumes, with an organization like us that provides that kind of physical scan on demand and physical and digital element. But yeah, hopefully and like Louise, if you've got it in a system, you've got them categorically correctly indexed and accessible in a digital sense, then you should hopefully just go in, put a supplier name in, put an invoice range in, or a date, or invoices processed by this person within this time frame, and the systems should be able to instantly provide that. With AI being added to these solutions now, we've got a couple of systems where we've built an intelligent assistant. You can basically ask it questions to say, can you show me the difference in contract values between this date and this date, or the changes between these documents, or what did I spend on, pens and paper this time last year? And the system actually interrogates the invoices or the documents within it, and then presents you the documents that it's found and results within an AI sense of and information based on the documents only ring fence within your system. So that's what we're getting asked a lot more to do with the platforms we build. So hopefully all of that should speed up the retrieval of documents and being able to put your finger straight on something when you need it.
Oh, that sounds positive. And I say that when Louise talks, the webinar gods listen, because that ad lib question that she posed there was at year end, how much time do you spend finding files for auditors? 63% said under 10 hours a month, and over 10 hours was 38%. So thank you very much for that. I understand as well. We've got some in terms of when people can get started on their journey and how they move through their digital journey. I think we've got a graphic here to kind of visually illustrate the sort of the flow of people, haven't we? Let's see if we can get up there and everyone can see that. Um, so are you able to sort of talk us through this sort of digital journey chart, Mike?
I was going to see it. I've got it on my screen. There you go. Yeah, I mean, this is something. Well, some of the numbers have kind of come off there. There's 1, 2, 3 put at the bottom. It's yeah to do with cost savings. And then obviously the more automated you get, normally the cost savings with reduction of staff access, people pay the risk kind of comes down. So we provide physical box storage, scan on demand access, and then EDM systems, workflow solutions, and AI automation. Normally, the more efficient you get, along that chart, the quicker it is to access data and automate data. There's lower risk cost, and you make potentially more savings. You have less people kind of processing it. We always normally present this when we're doing presentations to organizations to say, where are you on your digital journey? Where do you think you are along that graph going up? Are you in the box storage and the you can't see that, but I think it's like storage retrieval or scan on demand, or if you've got an EDM system in place, you in the workflow elements of automation, and where they are on that graph, potentially the less people pay risk kind of come down. So, and there's a few other areas we sometimes add in between that, but it kind of making it seem a bit more easy to understand. The manual handling, digital outsourcing, and automation of data on the right hand side going up. So the more you potentially go automated, the more savings people pay on risk that you don't have. So it's a quite easy to understand chart, but yeah, it's a good starting point to look at your your business and say, where are we on the journey, on the digital transformation journey? Where are we and where we want to get to? Yeah, and how can you help us? And we always look with them, audit potentially the systems, the solutions, the things they do on site, and yeah, we work to provide
Sure.
that
And I
better
think,
way of working going forward.
sorry, yeah, and I think lots of people as well, it's that sort of self-awareness, isn't it, Louise? And sort of understanding where your own pain points are in every organization before you can make that journey.
Yeah, and it's knowing where to start as well. I think people sometimes get overwhelmed because they think they have to do it all at once, and you don't have to do it all at once. You can take the bit that's most painful to you or the easiest as a proof of concept or a pilot. You don't have to say we're going to digitize everything. You can just say let's start with invoices or let's start with statements or something, just as a proof of concept or a pilot, and just to see how it works and to get everyone used to it. And then what I would also say is that change management, as always, is really important in this. So, you need to make sure that everyone understands why you're going digital or phygital and how you're doing it and what the benefit is to them. And the fact they won't need their printer anymore. I was just thinking, I've hardly used a printer in the past 5 years. I don't think I've used a printer actually in the last 5 years. Whereas that was something that was massively fought over in offices in years ago. So yeah, I think work out where to start. You don't have to do all of it, and think about the change management and communications and making sure that's really good as you do your project.
Yeah, Mike, any last thoughts before we wrap things up from you?
No, I mean, we say we've got a few projects going on this year, where we're organising the move to a digital kind of platform, especially in the finance sense, and it's heavily based around AI and the extraction of that data and using rather than templates, forms, and drawing and building it. It's getting it into an EDM system using prompts and various AI tools to extract everything that's critical from that invoice or that information that's coming in. So there's very little touch points by people in the office, because you don't want people sat there even from a digital document and then keying that into an ERP or finance system, whatever it be. You want that done for you. So
Yeah.
that's the real benefit. Something comes in, it's already kind of like inputted, all the data is extracted, it's in the system, and that's where you really start getting your savings. So, and again, not just in the finance sense, but with all sorts of other documentation that comes into the business or is produced by the business. It's where do you store it? What real benefits can you get out of it, especially with a lot of the good tools that are out there now. And that's where we help organizations just to be a bit smarter with some of the documents and the information that they've got to hand. So yeah, no, this has been really good. I've enjoyed this webinar today.
Okay, and I think it's been very useful for all of us actually to kind of open our eyes to this best practice sort of move here. So thank you very much. And so Mike Noyce there, solutions consultant at Restore Information Management, and thanks as well to Louise Graham, as always, COO and head of Institute at IFOL. And thank you for joining us. You only get out what you put in. I say it every time. So thank you very much for all of your interactions and involvements today. And you can find out more information about what we've discussed today on the IFOL website, along with information on IFOL membership as well. And this webinar is going to be made available too as well. So please do share it and rewatch it if you've missed anything. I've been Jay Viderlingham. So thanks again, everyone, for today, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.